I realized something was wrong the first night I stayed late at work after everyone else had gone home. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because nothing did. And yet the building felt different, as if it were paying attention to me in a way it never had before. The kind of attention you feel on the back of your neck when you're certain you're alone, but can't quite convince your body to believe it. I worked security at a small private office complex on the edge of town, the kind of place that housed insurance firms, accounting offices, and a couple of obscure tech startups that never seemed to have more than 3 employees at a time. My job was simple: monitor cameras, do hourly rounds, lock doors, log incidents. It was quiet, boring work, which was exactly why I took it. I needed boring. I needed predictable. I needed something that didn't follow me home in my thoughts. That night started like every other. I signed in at 10 p.m., poured burnt coffee into a chipped mug, and sat down in front of the monitor wall, watching empty hallways glow faintly under fluorescent lights. Around midnight, I noticed a detail I was sure had always been there, but had somehow escaped me until then. On one of the camera feeds, the hallway clock on the 3rd floor was ticking backward. Not fast, not dramatically, just 1 second at a time, the second hand making a soft, steady reverse sweep. I leaned closer to the screen, convinced it was a glitch, maybe a mirrored feed or a software error. But every other clock on the cameras was moving normally. I checked my phone. Time was moving forward for me. I remember feeling mildly unsettled, but mostly amused. Old buildings do weird things, I told myself. Electronics fail. I made a note in the log and forgot about it. The next time I noticed something off, it was during my 1 a.m. patrol. I always followed the same route: 1st floor, 2nd, 3rd, then the parking garage. The building was quiet in a way that pressed on your ears, the kind of silence broken only by your own footsteps and the distant hum of HVAC systems. When I reached the 3rd floor, I felt a subtle pressure in my chest, like the air was thicker there. The hallway lights flickered as I walked, not violently, just enough to make the shadows shift slightly out of sync with my movement. Halfway down the hall, I noticed the clock mounted above the emergency exit. This one wasn't moving backward. It wasn't moving at all. The second hand was frozen between ticks. I stood there longer than I should have, watching it, waiting for it to jump forward. But it never did. I laughed quietly at myself and kept walking. I didn't mention it in the log. Something about it felt personal, like acknowledging it would make it matter more. Over the next few nights, small patterns began to emerge. Things I would have dismissed individually started to feel connected. The backward clock appeared on different cameras at different times, never the same one twice in a row. The frozen clocks always appeared on floors I hadn't visited yet that night, as if they were waiting for me. Doors I locked during my rounds would sometimes be unlocked when I returned. Not forced, not damaged, just unlocked, like someone had simply turned the handle and left. The cameras never showed anyone doing it. I told my supervisor about the locks. He shrugged and said the building was old, that contractors came and went, that I should just keep locking them and logging it if it happened again. He didn't ask about the clocks. I didn't tell him. By the 2nd week, I started to feel like the building was developing rules, subtle ones, unspoken, but increasingly clear. If I checked the cameras too often, the feeds would stutter, frames repeating themselves for a few seconds before resuming. If I skipped a patrol, something would be out of place the next night. A chair turned slightly. A trash can moved a few inches from where it should be. None of it was threatening, but all of it felt corrective, like the building was nudging me back into a routine it preferred. One night, during a particularly slow shift, I noticed a new camera feed appear on the monitor wall. It wasn't labeled, didn't match any floor or room I recognized. It showed a narrow hallway with unpainted concrete walls and a single bare bulb. hanging from the ceiling. At the end of the hall was a door. I stared at it, scrolling through the camera list to see where it was coming from, but there was no entry for it. When I looked back up, the feed was gone. I told myself I was overtired. I started sleeping less after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that hallway, the way the light pooled weakly on the floor, the sense that the door at the end was meant to be opened by someone who hadn't arrived yet. The first time I heard my own voice on the cameras, I nearly quit. It was around 2:30 a.m., and I was sitting at the desk, sipping coffee, when one of the feeds flickered and the audio spiked. At first it was just static, then words began to form, faint but unmistakable. It was me, or at least it sounded exactly like me, calmly narrating my patrol route. "Third floor clear," the voice said, a half second before I stood up to begin my third floor patrol. I froze, listening as the voice continued, describing actions I hadn't taken yet, but was about to. When it said, "stopping at the clock," I felt my stomach drop. I didn't go upstairs that night. I sat at the desk until morning, every light on, every camera feed pulled up, watching as nothing happened, and everything felt wrong. The voice never returned, but the sense of being anticipated did. It was as if the building had learned me, my habits, my timing, my thoughts, and was now gently moving ahead of me, laying tracks I was expected to follow. I began to notice things written in the logbook that I hadn't written. Short entries in my handwriting, dated nights in the future. All doors secured. No incidents to report. The first time I saw one, dated 2 days ahead, I ripped the page out and threw it away. 2 days later, I found the same entry written again, same words, same handwriting, on a fresh page. I stopped touching the logbook after that. I told myself I'd keep everything in my head. That was a mistake. Once I stopped writing things down, the building seemed to take over that task itself. Signs appeared where there had been none before. Small printed notices taped to doors, written in plain black text. "Please close this door behind you. Please turn off the lights when leaving. Please do not stand here too long." The last one appeared next to the third floor clock, which had resumed ticking, though not in any direction I could easily follow. I started timing my patrols to avoid that spot. The building responded by shifting things just enough to slow me down elsewhere. An elevator that took longer than usual. A stairwell door that stuck slightly. It was subtle, almost polite. It wasn't until the night I tried to break the routine entirely that I realized how much it mattered. I decided to leave early. I didn't tell anyone. At 1:45 a.m., I grabbed my jacket, turned off the desk lamp, and headed for the exit. As soon as I stepped into the lobby, every light in the building went out at once. Not flickering, not fading, just off. The emergency lights didn't come on. The darkness was immediate and complete, heavy enough to make it hard to breathe. In the silence, I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, matching my own pace as I backed toward the door. I didn't see anyone. I never did. The exit wouldn't open. I stood there in the dark, my heart pounding, until the lights came back on as suddenly as they had gone out. The lobby was empty. The door opened easily. I went back to the desk and finished my shift. I didn't try to leave early again. After that, the building seemed satisfied. Things went back to being merely strange instead of actively resistant. The cameras behaved. The locks stayed locked. The clocks, for the most part, moved forward. But I felt different. Less like a person working in a building, and more like a component in a larger system, a moving part that needed to stay in sync. Sometimes, during my patrols, I'd catch glimpses of movement in reflective surfaces that didn't line up with my own. A shadow that paused when I paused, then continued on when I turned away. The unlabeled camera feed returned occasionally, always for a few seconds at a time, always showing the same hallway, the same door. One night, the door was open. I don't know how long it had been that way before I noticed. I didn't see what was beyond it. The camera cut out before I could adjust the zoom. I started to feel like the building wasn't trying to scare me anymore. It was trying to remember me. My supervisor transferred me to day shifts a month later, citing budget changes. Last night I worked there, I did my patrols one final time, slower than usual, taking everything in. When I reached the third floor, the clock above the exit was gone. In its place was a small plaque, like the kind you see on office doors, engraved with my name and the hours I used to work. I didn't touch it. I finished my shift and left at dawn, sunlight washing the building in a way that made it look ordinary again. I thought about that place less and less as time went on. I found another job. I moved. Life continued. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone and the house is quiet, I notice patterns forming around me. Lights flickering when I linger in one room too long. Clocks hesitating before ticking forward. Doors that I don't remember locking but know I did. And every so often, I catch myself doing things in the same order every night, following routines I don't remember choosing, with the faint, persistent feeling that somewhere, something is keeping track, making sure I stay exactly where I'm supposed to be, moving exactly when I should, because it already knows what comes next. After I left that job, I told myself the routines I'd fallen into were just habits, the kind that stick after working nights for too long. But habits don't watch you back, and they don't adjust themselves when you try to change them. I noticed it the first time I tried to deliberately disrupt my evenings, staying up later than usual, leaving lights on, moving furniture slightly out of alignment. Small rebellions meant to prove to myself that nothing bad would happen if I broke the pattern. Nothing obvious did. But the next day, everything felt subtly corrected. The chair nudged back closer to where it had been. The lamp angled just slightly toward the wall instead of the room. The clock on my kitchen wall ticking a fraction louder, as if to remind me it was there. I replaced that clock with a digital one, then unplugged it entirely when I caught myself watching it too closely, waiting for it to hesitate. But the sense of timing didn't leave with it. I began waking up at the same minute every night without an alarm, my body snapping awake, with the certainty that something expected me to be conscious. At first, I'd lie there in the dark, listening, convinced I could hear movement in the walls, a distant shifting, like someone turning pages very slowly. When I finally gave in and got out of bed, the feeling eased, as if I'd complied with an unspoken request. I stopped telling myself it was coincidence when I realized the relief always came after I did the same things in the same order. Check the locks, stand in the hallway for exactly a few breaths, look out the window without really seeing anything, then sit down and wait. Wait for what, I couldn't say, but the waiting felt important, necessary, like skipping it would create a problem I wasn't prepared to solve. The first sign that it wasn't just my mind came when I found a piece of paper on my kitchen counter one morning. It was blank except for a single line written neatly across the middle. "You were late last night." I stared at it for a long time, trying to remember if I'd written it myself, but I didn't recognize the pen, didn't remember holding it, and the handwriting, though similar to mine, was too precise, each letter measured, deliberate. I threw it away, took the trash out immediately, and spent the rest of the day feeling watched by my own apartment, every surface suddenly capable of remembering me, even if I refused to remember it. That night, I stayed in bed. I forced myself to ignore the pull to get up, to check, to follow the routine. My heart pounded as the minutes passed, the air growing heavier with each tick of time I wasn't acknowledging. Somewhere close by, something creaked. Not like wood settling, but like weight shifting. I kept my eyes closed, my breath shallow, until eventually exhaustion dragged me under. When I woke in the morning, my bedroom door was open. I always slept with it closed. I started leaving small markers to test my environment. A glass set near the edge of the counter. A book placed slightly crooked on the table. Tiny deviations I could check later. They never moved dramatically, never fell or shifted in obvious ways, but they were always subtly corrected. The glass nudged inward, the book squared with the edge, as if my space preferred order and was patient enough to enforce it slowly. I moved again, this time farther away, into a smaller place where everything was new and unfamiliar. For a while, it helped. The nights were quieter, my sleep deeper, the routines less insistent. I let myself believe I'd left whatever it was behind. Then one evening, while unpacking the last of my boxes, I found something I didn't remember packing. A security badge from my old job, clipped to a lanyard, the plastic worn smooth from use. On the back, where there had once been a barcode, someone had written a date in marker. It was tomorrow's date. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor, badge in my hand, watching the shadows shift as cars passed outside, feeling the slow return of that familiar pressure, that sense of being gently guided back into place. The next day, nothing happened. No messages, no notes, no sudden revelations. Just a quiet certainty that whatever had learned me hadn't lost interest. That distance didn't matter as much as participation. Over time, the feeling faded into the background again, becoming something I lived with rather than fought. A low-level awareness that my actions were being noted, remembered, perhaps even rehearsed somewhere I couldn't see. Sometimes, when I catch my reflection in a dark window late at night, I hesitate, waiting for it to move a fraction of a second before I do. And sometimes, I swear, it almost does. I don't know what would happen if I stopped following the patterns entirely, if I truly broke away instead of just pretending to, and I'm not sure I want to find out, because the longer this goes on, the more it feels like whatever is watching isn't trying to hurt me, isn't trying to scare me. It's just making sure I stay consistent, predictable, easy to remember, and on quiet nights, when everything is exactly where it should be, I get the unsettling impression that somewhere, in a place I once worked and thought I'd left behind, a light is still on, a camera feed is still running, and something is calmly noting that everything is, once again, in order. That impression didn't leave me after that. It settled in, a constant background awareness that only became noticeable when I tried to ignore it, like a low hum you stop hearing until it suddenly cuts out. I began to sense moments of attention, the way you sense pressure changes before a storm, an almost imperceptible tightening in the air, a feeling that the space around me had shifted its focus. It happened in mundane situations at first, standing too long in the grocery store aisle deciding between brands, pausing mid-step on a sidewalk as if I'd forgotten something important. In those moments, I'd feel an urge to move, to decide, to continue. And when I did, the feeling would ease, replaced by a quiet, unsettling calm. I stopped hesitating in my daily life because hesitation felt like a mistake, like standing still on a moving walkway and forcing everyone behind you to adjust. At night, the sense of being observed sharpened. I'd sit on my couch, lights low, television on mute, and feel as though the room itself was waiting for something from me, not demanding it, just expecting it. If I stayed up too late, the air grew heavy again, my thoughts looping back to the same places, the same memories, until I finally went to bed at roughly the same time every night. Sleep came easily then, dreamless and deep, and I'd wake feeling oddly refreshed, as if I'd done something right. The dreams started later, creeping in slowly. They weren't nightmares, not really, just repetitions. I dreamed of hallways that stretched slightly longer each time I walked them, of doors that were always just ahead of me, of clocks that ticked softly without faces. In these dreams, I wasn't afraid. I felt purposeful, efficient, moving through spaces that seemed designed for me. And when I woke, the sense of satisfaction lingered longer than it should have. I told myself dreams were meaningless, that the mind likes patterns and order, especially after stress. But that explanation didn't account for the details that began to follow me into waking life. One morning, I found a small scuff mark on my floor, the kind left by a shoe turning slightly in place. It was near the center of the living room, exactly where I stood in my dreams, before deciding which hallway to take. I stared at it for a long time, trying to remember if I'd twisted my foot there, but the memory didn't come. I cleaned it up and went about my day, carrying the quiet discomfort with me, like an extra layer of clothing I couldn't remove. I started noticing time behaving strangely around me, not dramatically, but enough to make me question myself. An hour would pass that felt like minutes, or minutes would stretch uncomfortably long. When I checked the clock, it was always right, always consistent, but my internal sense of it felt trained, adjusted, as if something had gently recalibrated me to match an external schedule I wasn't allowed to see. Conversations repeated themselves, not word for word, but in structure and tone, people asking similar questions in similar ways on different days, reacting to my answers with the same expressions, the same nods. It felt less like coincidence and more like rehearsal, as though I were moving through variations of the same scene. I began to wonder how much of my life was actually new, and how much was simply being replayed with slight adjustments. The thought was unsettling, but also strangely comforting. There was a safety and predictability in knowing what came next, even if you couldn't consciously articulate it. I realized that was the most disturbing part, how easily I'd begun to accept it. The first time I truly felt afraid again was when something unexpected happened. I woke up one night at the usual time, the familiar pull urging me out of bed. But when I stood, the feeling didn't ease. It intensified, pressing in from all sides, a silent insistence that something was wrong. I followed the routine anyway, checking the locks, standing in the hallway, looking out the window. The street outside was empty, still, the way it always was at that hour. When I turned back into the apartment, I noticed the front door was open, just a crack, enough to let in a thin line of cooler air. My heart raced as I stared at it, every instinct screaming that this wasn't part of the pattern, that this was a deviation I hadn't caused. Slowly, carefully, I pushed the door shut and locked it, my hands shaking. The pressure didn't fade. It hovered, heavy and unresolved, until dawn. The next morning, there was another note on the counter. That was not scheduled. I sat down hard, the words blurring as I read them again and again. Not scheduled. The implication settled over me like a weight. There was a schedule then, something more formal than habits and routines, something structured and deliberate, and I had disrupted it. For the first time since leaving that building, I felt genuinely out of sync, like a gear slipping in a machine that noticed immediately. The day passed in a haze of anxiety, every sound making me flinch, every shadow feel loaded with meaning. That night, I didn't feel the usual pull to wake. I slept straight through until morning, deep and heavy. And when I woke, my body felt wrong, sluggish, like I'd missed an important step. I found the note waiting for me, placed neatly on the nightstand. We adjusted. There was no anger in the words, no threat, just a calm statement of fact. I laughed then, a short, shaky sound that surprised me, because some part of me had expected that response, had known it would come. Adjustment implied flexibility, correction, a system that could compensate for small errors. It meant I wasn't indispensable, just useful, replaceable if necessary. That realization didn't scare me as much as it should have. It made me feel small, but also strangely relieved. The pressure eased after that. The nights grew quieter again, the routines gentler, less insistent. I followed them without thinking, slipping back into the rhythm I'd learned so well, and life smoothed itself out around me. The notes stopped appearing. The dreams became less vivid. If this were a story with a clear ending, this is where I'd tell you everything went back to normal. But normal had changed without me noticing, and I only realized how much when I tried, once more, to step outside of it. I was invited to stay with a friend out of town for a few nights, a spontaneous trip, no planning, no schedule. I agreed before I could think better of it. The first night there, I lay awake, wide-eyed, the familiar pull absent, replaced by a restless unease that crawled under my skin. I didn't know what I was supposed to do without instructions. I didn't know when to wake, where to stand, what to check. The silence felt wrong, unstructured, like a room without walls. Sometime before dawn, I drifted into a shallow sleep, and when I woke, I was standing in the hallway outside the guest room, my hand hovering inches from the doorframe. I don't remember getting out of bed. I don't remember walking there. My friend slept through it, oblivious, and I spent the rest of the morning pretending everything was fine, my mind racing. When I got home a few days later, the sense of relief was immediate and overwhelming. The apartment felt welcoming in a way I hadn't noticed before, every object in its place, every angle familiar. I stood in the living room and felt the pressure settle gently around me, like a blanket being tucked in. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. I don't leave town often anymore. I don't make sudden changes. I don't test boundaries the way I used to. I tell myself it's because I like stability, because routines are healthy, because predictability brings peace. But late at night, when I'm standing in my hallway, counting breaths without realizing I've started, I sometimes wonder if I ever really left that building at all, or if I'm just another camera now, another feed running quietly, faithfully, recording a life that has learned exactly how to stay in frame. That thought lingered longer than I wanted it to. The idea that I hadn't escaped anything so much as been relocated, reframed into a different kind of monitored space. And once it took hold, I started seeing evidence of it everywhere. Not proof exactly, just confirmations subtle enough that they could always be dismissed if I needed them to be. I noticed how my apartment complex's hallway lights clicked on a second before I stepped out of my door, consistently, night after night, as if responding to my movement before it happened. I noticed how my phone battery always seemed to drain to the same percentage by the time I went to bed, no matter how much or how little I used it, settling at a number that felt deliberate rather than accidental. I noticed how strangers would sometimes pause mid-conversation when talking to me, their eyes flicking briefly to some point just over my shoulder, like they were waiting for a cue I couldn't see. None of it was alarming on its own, but together, it created a quiet pressure, the sense of living inside a system that had already anticipated every version of me I might try to become. I stopped trying to imagine a future very far ahead, because the present felt curated enough as it was. The routines became less about specific actions and more about states of being. Calm at certain hours, stillness when it felt expected, movement when the air seemed to thicken around me. I didn't need notes anymore. I didn't need reminders. My body responded before my thoughts could interfere, and that efficiency brought with it a disturbing sense of comfort. One evening, while standing in the kitchen waiting for water to boil, I realized I'd been humming softly under my breath, a tune I didn't recognize, but somehow new all the same. It stopped the moment I became aware of it, leaving the room feeling oddly hollow, like a conversation that had just ended. I tried to remember where I'd heard it, but the melody slipped away as soon as I reached for it, replaced by the faint impression that it had been part of the background for a long time, unnoticed because it fit too well. That night, I dreamed of the hallway again, but this time it wasn't unfamiliar or unsettling. It felt like home. The walls were smooth, the light steady, the door at the end already open. I walked through without hesitation, and on the other side was a room filled with monitors, each one showing a different angle of my apartment, my workplace, the streets I walked, the stores I visited. In the dream, this didn't frighten me. It felt logical, necessary. Of course this was happening. Of course it had always been happening. When I woke, the sense of acceptance lingered longer than any fear had before. I went about my day with a lightness I hadn't felt in years, as if letting go of resistance had freed up space inside me I hadn't known was occupied. The world seemed simpler when I stopped questioning it. That simplicity didn't last. It never does. The disruption came quietly, the way all meaningful changes seem to. I was sitting on my couch one night, following the familiar rhythm of the evening, when the pressure didn't arrive. No tightening in the air. No sense of expectation. Just emptiness. It was subtle at first, easy to miss, but as minutes passed, the absence became more pronounced, like the sudden silence after a constant noise stops. I waited, sitting very still, my heart beating faster with each second that nothing happened. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly alone. The feeling should have been a relief. Instead, it terrified me. I stood and paced, unsure what to do without guidance, without that invisible framework holding everything in place. I checked the locks, not because I felt I needed to, but because I didn't know what else to do. I stood in the hallway, counted my breaths, looked out the window. Nothing responded. The night remained stubbornly ordinary. I slept poorly, waking often, my dreams fractured and nonsensical, lacking the clean lines and familiar spaces they'd settled into. The next day passed in a fog, every decision feeling heavier, more uncertain, like walking without knowing where the ground was, solid. That evening, I found another note. It was waiting for me on the kitchen table, placed with the same precise care as before. Observation paused, it read. Beneath it, in smaller letters, self-correction in progress. I don't remember sitting down, but I must have, because the next thing I knew, I was staring at the note from the chair, my hands resting flat on the table. Self-correction. The phrase echoed in my mind, unsettling in its neutrality. It didn't sound like punishment or warning. It sounded like maintenance. That night, the pressure returned, stronger than ever, but different. It felt unfocused, searching, like a system recalibrating after a fault. I followed the routine instinctively, hoping compliance would smooth things out, but the relief never came. Instead, the air seemed to watch me more closely, every movement noted, evaluated. I felt like a test subject, a variable being adjusted and observed. The dreams returned, but they were wrong now, fragmented. The hallways bending at impossible angles, the monitors flickering, feeds overlapping and bleeding into one another. In one dream, I saw myself standing in my apartment, performing the routine with perfect precision, while another version of me watched from behind a glass wall, expressionless. I woke with the certainty that one of us was redundant. The days that followed were marked by small failures. I'd hesitate when I shouldn't, move too quickly when stillness was expected. Objects were no longer subtly corrected. They stayed out of place, as if whatever had once cared had withdrawn its attention, or was too busy elsewhere to intervene. The sense of comfort I'd grown used to eroded, replaced by a raw, exposed feeling, like standing on a stage after the lights have gone out but before you're allowed to leave. I started hearing things again, faint sounds at night that didn't belong to the building settling or pipes shifting. Soft clicks, distant hums, the whisper of something moving through channels I couldn't see. I caught myself narrating my actions under my breath, the way I used to at work, a habit I thought I'd lost, and the realization that it was coming back on its own made my skin crawl. One evening, exhausted and on edge, I deliberately did nothing. I sat on the floor in the middle of the living room and stayed there, unmoving, unresponsive, refusing to follow any pattern. The pressure built quickly, sharper than before, but I held on, breathing through it, telling myself this was how I took control back. For a long time, nothing happened. Then, very gently, I felt it. A subtle shift, like hands adjusting something just behind my eyes. The pressure eased, replaced by a deep, bone-level tiredness. When I stood, the apartment felt right again, aligned, balanced. On the wall opposite me, where there had been nothing before, was a small, dark circle, no bigger than a coin, perfectly centered at eye level. I stared at it, heart racing, knowing, without knowing, how that it hadn't been there earlier. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I understood what it was meant to represent. Not a camera, not exactly, but a marker, a point of reference, a reminder of where attention could focus if it needed to. The routines resumed after that, smoother than ever. The pressure gentler, more refined. I stopped finding notes. I stopped dreaming of hallways. Life settled into a version of normal that felt earned, as if I'd passed some unspoken test by resisting just enough, then yielding at the right moment. I don't know what would happen if I tried to disrupt things again. I don't know if the observation is truly paused, or if it's simply become efficient enough that I no longer notice it. What I do know is that some nights, when I catch sight of that small, dark circle on the wall in the corner of my eye, I get the distinct impression that something is checking in, not out of concern or curiosity, but out of habit, making sure I'm still here, still consistent, still worth remembering. And as long as I keep moving the way I've learned to, breathing when it expects me to, standing where it's easiest to see me, everything remains quiet, orderly, and unresolved, like a system that never truly shuts down, only waits.